Good morrow, scholars. Welcome back to Breaking Dawn. Finally, I've been gone almost a week, and I should have said something. I don't know why I didn't. There's a lot of stuff going on between us having to get a new roof, needing to get a new washing machine, needing to figure out this car loan. I have a car now. It's a Chevrolet Spark 2014. I'd show you, but it's outside. It's a small car, but I can't fit it in my room. If I could, I would. Anyway, I'm really sorry that it's been a while, and with any luck, we can get back on track. There are a few of you that have been suggesting different books. What I'm thinking of doing is going back and reading all the comments where someone suggested a book reading, and what I'll do is I'll read the first chapter of each of them, not all in one day, but maybe like 2 or 3 even, to kind of make up for lost time for a week or 2 until I've gotten through the entire list of books. And then I might alternate, like I might try and get 7 books going at once, and then once a day. Well, I guess if I wanted to do 2 videos a day, I would need like 14 books, and I just read 1 chapter from each of them. And let me know what you guys think. Do you prefer like a continuous string of me reading the same book, like I did with the Twilight series and Five Nights at Freddy's: The Silver Eyes, or would you prefer a weekly thing, where you just come by once a week to listen to your chapter, whichever book it happens to be, and then continue on your merry way, whichever. Let me know what your thoughts are. I'm also going to be playing some more games, hopefully, so it'll probably be like a weekly thing, like if I don't have a book to read or something, or if the urge gets to me. But I'm hoping that it won't interfere with the chapter readings. I've been working on going to bed at a decent time and waking up earlier. The only reason this one was later than I wanted it to be is because I had to clean out Iggy's cage, and I was helping my mom in the garden, and I had to make some breakfast. In that order, actually. Anyway, we are in chapter 39, the final chapter. The Happily Ever After. Again, really sorry it took so long. Anyway. Sorry. Let's see. So it was a combination of things there at the end, but what it really boiled down to was Bella, Edward was explaining. Our family and our 2 remaining guests sat in the Collins' great room while the forest turned black outside the tall windows. Vladimir and Stefan had vanished before we'd stopped celebrating. They were extremely disappointed in the way things had turned out, but Edward said that they'd enjoyed the Volturi's cowardice almost enough to make up for their frustration. I liked them, oddly enough. I just noticed like it's in line with my jaw. Benjamin and Tia were quick to follow after Amon and Kebi, anxious to let them know the outcome of the conflict. I was sure we would see them again, Benjamin and Tia, at least. None of the nomads lingered. Peter and Charlotte had a short conversation with Jasper, and then they too were gone. The reunited Amazons had been anxious to return home as well. They had a difficult time being away from their beloved rainforest, though they were more reluctant to leave than some of the others. You must bring the child to see me, Zafrina had insisted. Promise me, young one. Nessie had pressed her hand to my neck, pleading as well. Of course, Zafrina, I'd agreed. We shall be great friends, my Nessie, the wild woman had declared before leaving with her sisters. The Irish coven continued the exodus. Well done. What's her name? Carlyle complimented her. Sorry. As they said goodbye. Ah, the power of wishful thinking, she answered sarcastically, rolling her eyes. And then she was serious. Of course, this isn't over. The Volturi won't forgive what happened here. Edward was the one to answer that. They've been seriously shaken, their confidence is shattered, but yes, I'm sure they'll recover from the blow someday, and then, his eyes tightened, I imagine they'll try to pick us off separately. Alice will warn us when they intend to strike, What's-Her-Face said in a sure voice. And we'll gather again. Perhaps the time will come when our world is ready to be free of the Volturi altogether. That time may come, Carlyle replied. If it does, we'll stand together. Yes, we will, my friend, What's-Her-Name said. And how can we fail when I will it otherwise? She let out a great peal of laughter. Exactly, Carlyle said. He and What's-Her-Name embraced, and then he shook Liam's hand. Try to find Alistair and tell him what happened. I'd hate to think of him hiding under a rock for the next decade. What's-Her-Name laughed again. Maggie hugged both Nessie and me, and then the Irish coven was gone. The Denali's were the last to leave, Garrett with them, as he would be from now on, I was fairly sure. The atmosphere of celebration was too much for Tanya and Kate. They needed time to grieve for their lost sister. Huilin and Nahuel were the ones who stayed, though I had expected those last two to go back with the Amazons. Carlyle was deep in fascinated conversation with Huilin. Nahuel sat close beside her, listening while Edward told the rest of us the story of the conflict as only he knew it. Sorry. Alice gave Aro the excuse he needed to get out of the fight. If he hadn't been so terrified of Bella, he probably would have gone ahead with their original plan. Terrified? I said skeptically. Of me? He smiled at me with a look I didn't entirely recognize. It was tender, but also odd and even exasperated. When will you ever see yourself clearly? He said softly. Then he spoke louder, to the others as well as to me. The Volturi haven't fought a fair fight in about 2,500 years, and they've never fought one where they were at a disadvantage. Especially since they gained Jane and Alec, they've only been involved with unopposed slaughterings. You should have seen how we look to them. Usually, I'm not sure who's talking at the moment. I'll just assume it's Edward. Usually Alec cuts off all sense and feeling from their victims while they go through the charade of a council. That way no one can run when the verdict is given. But there we stood, ready, waiting, outnumbering them with gifts of our own while their gifts were rendered useless by Bella. Aro knew that with Zephrina on our side, they would be the blind ones when the battle commenced. I'm sure our numbers would have been pretty severely decimated, but they were sure that theirs would be too. There was even a good possibility that they would lose. They've never dealt with that possibility before. They didn't deal with it well today. Hard to feel confident when you're surrounded by horse-sized wolves, Emmett laughed, poking Jacob's arm. It's nice that they're getting along now. Jacob flashed a grin at him. It was the wolves that stopped them in the first place, I said. Sure was, Jacob agreed. Absolutely, Edward agreed. That was another sight they've never seen. The true children of the moon rarely move in packs, and they're never much in control of themselves. 16 enormous, regimented wolves was a surprise they weren't prepared for. Caius is actually terrified of werewolves. He almost lost a fight with one a few thousand years ago and never got over it. So there are real werewolves? I asked, with the full moon and silver bullets and all that? Jacob snorted. Real? What is that? Does that make me imaginary? You know what I mean. Full moon, yes, Edward said. Silver bullets, no. That was just another one of those myths to make humans feel like they had a sporting chance. There aren't very many of them left. Caius has had them hunted into near extinction. And you never mentioned this because it never came up? Well, technically it did, if you remember. I pointed it out in Eclipse. Hey, I remembered. I rolled my eyes and Alice laughed, leaning forward. She was tucked under Edward's other arm to wink at me. I glared back. I loved her insanely, of course, but now that I'd had a chance to realize that she was really home, that her defection was only a ruse because Edward had to believe that she'd abandoned us, I was beginning to feel pretty irritated with her. Alice had some explaining to do. Alice sighed. Just get it off your chest, Bella. How could you do that to me, Alice? It was necessary. Necessary, I exploded. You had me totally convinced that we were all going to die. I've been a wreck for weeks. It might have gone that way, she said calmly, in which case you needed to be prepared to save Nessie. Instinctively I held Nessie asleep now on my lap, tighter in my arms. But you knew there were other ways too, I accused. You knew there was hope. Did it ever occur to you that you could have told me everything? I know Edward had to think we were dead at a dead end for Auro's sake, but you could have told me. She looked at me speculatively, for a moment. I don't think so, she said. You're not that good an actress. This is about my acting skills? Oh, take it down an octave, Bella. Do you have any idea how complicated this was to set up? I couldn't even be sure that someone like Nahuel existed. All I knew was that I would be looking for something I couldn't see. Try to imagine searching for a blind spot. Not the easiest thing I've ever done. Plus, we had to send back the key witnesses like they weren't in enough of a hurry. And then keeping my eyes open all the time just in case you decided to throw me any more instructions. At some point, you're going to have to tell me what exactly is in Rio. I remember. Before any of that, I had to try to see every trick the Volturi might come in with, and give you a few clues. Give you what few clues I could, so that you would be ready for their strategy. Sorry. And I only had just a few hours to trace out all the possibilities. Most of all, I had to make sure you'd all believe that I was ditching out on you, because Auro had to be positive that you had nothing left up your sleeves, or he would never have committed to an out the way he did. There we go. And if you think I didn't feel like a schmuck... Okay, I interrupted. Sorry, I know it was rough for you too. It's just that... Well, I've missed you like crazy, Alice. Don't do that to me again. Alice's trilling laugh rang through the room, and we all smiled to hear that music once more. I missed you too, Bella, so forgive me, and try to be satisfied with being the superhero of the day. Everyone else laughed now, and I ducked my face into Nessie's hair, embarrassed. I would be too. Edward went back to analyzing every shift of intention and control that had happened in the meadow today, declaring that it was my shield that had made the Volturi run away with their tails between their legs. The way everyone looked at me made me uncomfortable, even Edward. It was like I had grown 100 feet during the course of the morning. I tried to ignore the impressed looks, mostly keeping my eyes on Nessie's sleeping face and Jacob's unchanged expression. I would always be just Bella to him, and that was a relief. The hardest stare to ignore was the most confusing one. It wasn't like this half-human, half-vampire Nahuel was used to thinking of me in a certain way. For all he knew, I went around attacking vampires every day, and the scene in the meadow had been nothing unusual at all. But the boy never took his eyes off of me. Or maybe he was looking at Nessie. That made me uncomfortable too. He couldn't be oblivious to the fact that Nessie was the only female of his kind that wasn't his half-sister. I didn't think this idea had occurred to Jacob yet. I kind of hoped it would soon. I'd had enough fighting to... Or it wouldn't soon, sorry. I'd had enough fighting to last me for a while. Eventually, the others ran out of questions for Edward, and the discussion dissolved into a bunch of smaller conversations. I felt oddly tired, not sleepy, of course, but just like the day had been long enough. I wanted some peace, some normality. I wanted Nessie in her own bed. I wanted the walls of my own little home around me. I looked at Edward and felt for a moment like I could read his mind. I could see he felt exactly the same way, ready for some peace. Should we take Nessie? That's probably a good idea, he agreed quickly. I'm sure she didn't sleep soundly last night, what with all the snoring. He grinned at Jacob. Jacob rolled his eyes and then yawned. It's been a while since I slept in a bed. I bet my dad would get a kick out of having me under his roof again. I touched his cheek. Thank you, Jacob. Any time, Bella, but you already know that. He got up, stretched, kissed the top of Nessie's head, and then the top of mine. Finally, he punched Edward's shoulder. See you guys tomorrow. I guess things are going to be kind of boring now, aren't they? I fervently hope so, Edward said. We got up when he was gone. I shifted my weight carefully so that Nessie was never jostled. I was deeply grateful to see her getting a sound sleep. So much weight had been on her tiny shoulders. It was time she got to be a child again, protected and secure. A few more years of childhood. The idea of peace and security reminded me of someone who didn't have those feelings all the time. Oh, Jasper, I asked as we turned for the door. Jasper was sandwiched tight in between Alice and Esme, somehow seeming more central to the family picture than usual. Yes, Bella? I'm curious, why is J. Jinx scared stiff by just the sound of your name? Jasper chuckled. It's just been my experience that some kinds of working relationships are better motivated by fear than by monetary gain. I frowned, promising myself that I would take over that working relationship from now on and spare Jay the heart attack that was surely on the way. We were kissed and hugged and wished a good night to our family. The only off note was Nahuel again, who looked intently after us, as if he wished he could follow. Once we were across the river, we walked barely faster than human speed, in no hurry, holding hands. I was sick of being under a deadline, and I just wanted to take my time. Edward must have felt the same. I have to say I'm thoroughly impressed with Jacob right now, Edward told me. The wolves make quite an impact, don't they? That's not what I mean. Not once today did he think about the fact that, according to Nahuel, Nessie will be fully matured in about 6.5 years. I considered that for a minute. He doesn't see her that way. He's not in a hurry for her to grow up. He just wants her to be happy. I know, like I said, impressive. It goes against the grains to say so, but she could do worse. I frowned. I'm not going to think about that for approximately 6.5 more years. Edward laughed and then sighed. Of course, it looks like he'll have some competition to worry about when the time comes. My frown deepened. I noticed. I'm grateful to Nahuel for today, but all the staring was a little weird. I don't care if she is the only half-vampire he's not related to. Oh, he wasn't staring at her. He was staring at you. That's what it had seemed like, but that didn't make any sense. Why would he do that? Because you're alive, he said quietly. You lost me. All his life, he explained, and he's 50 years older than I am. Decrepit, I interjected. He ignored me. He's always thought of himself as an evil creation, a murderer by nature. His sisters had all killed their mothers as well, but they thought nothing of it. Johann raised them to think of the humans as animals, while they were gods. But Nahuel was taught by Huilen, and Huilen loved her sister more than anyone else. It shaped his whole perspective, and in some ways, he's truly hated himself. That's so sad, I murmured. Dang it! And then he saw the three of us and realized for the first time that just because he's half immortal, it doesn't mean he's inherently evil. He looks at me and sees what his father should have been. You are fairly ideal in every way, I agreed. He snorted and then was serious again. He looks at you and sees the life his mother should have had. That actually is sad. I love my mom. Don't make fun of me. It's just... Well, I mean, I guess if you want to... Anyway, let's get back to the story before I actually start crying. Like, crying. You can kind of hear it. Poor Nahuel, I murmured. Dang it! And then sighed because I knew I would never be able to think badly of him after this, no matter how uncomfortable his stare made me. Don't be sad for him. He's happy now. Today he's finally begun to forgive himself. I smiled for Nahuel's happiness and then thought that today belonged to happiness. Sorry. Though Irina's sacrifice was a dark shadow against the white light, keeping the moment from perfection, the joy was impossible to deny. The life I'd fought for was safe again. My family was reunited. My daughter had a beautiful future stretching out endlessly in front of her. Tomorrow I would go see my father. He would see that the fear in my eyes had been replaced with joy, and he would be happy too. Suddenly, I was sure that I wouldn't find him there alone. I hadn't been as observant as I might have been in the last few weeks, but in this moment, it was like I'd known all along. Sue would be with Charlie, the werewolf's mom with the vampire's dad, and he wouldn't be alone anymore. I smiled widely at this new insight. What about Billy? They were spending a lot of time together, remember? Although I guess that was really more for the sake of having to deal with werewolf children. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. But most significant in this tidal wave of happiness was the surest fact of all. Sorry. I was with Edward forever. Not that I'd want to repeat the last several weeks, but I had to admit they'd made me appreciate what I had more than ever. The cottage was a place of perfect peace in the silver-blue night. We carried Nessie to her bed and gently tucked her in. She smiled as she slept. I took Ara's gift from around my neck and tossed it lightly into the corner of her room. She could play with it if she wished. She likes sparkly things. Edward and I walked slowly to our room, swinging our arms between us. "A night for celebrations," he murmured, and he put his hand under my chin to lift my lips to his. "Wait," I hesitated, pulling away. He looked at me in confusion. As a general rule, I didn't pull away. Okay, it was more than a general rule. This was a first. "I want to try something," I informed him, smiling slightly at his bewildered expression. I put my hands on both sides of his face and closed my eyes in concentration. I hadn't done very well with this when Zafrina had tried to teach me before, but I knew my shield better now. I understood the part that fought against separation from me, the automatic instinct to preserve self above all else. It still wasn't anywhere near as easy as shielding other people along with myself. I felt the elastic recoil again as my shield fought to protect me. I had to strain to push it entirely away from me. It took all of my focus. "Bella," Edward whispered in shock. Sorry. I knew it was working then, so I concentrated even harder, dredging up the specific memories I'd saved for this moment, letting them flood my mind and hopefully his as well. Some of the memories were not clear, dim human memories, seen through weak eyes and heard through weak ears. The first time I had seen his face, the way it felt when he held me in the meadow, the sound of his voice through the darkness of my faltering consciousness as he saved me from James. His face as he waited under a canopy of flowers to marry me. Every precious moment from the island. His cold hands touching our baby through my skin. That's disturbing. And the sharp memories, perfectly recalled, his face when I'd opened my eyes to my new life, to the endless dawn of immortality, that first kiss, that first night. His lips suddenly fierce against mine broke my concentration. With a gasp, I lost my grip on the struggling weight I was holding away from myself. It snapped back like stressed elastic, protecting my thoughts once again. "Whoops, I lost it." I sighed. "I heard you," he breathed. "How? How did you do that?" "Zafrina's idea. We practiced with it a few times." He was dazed. He blinked twice and shook his head. "Now you know," I said lightly and shrugged. "No one's ever loved anyone as much as I love you." I beg to differ. "You're almost right," he smiled, his eyes still a little wider than usual. "I know of just one exception. The liar." He started to kiss me again, but then stopped abruptly. "Can you do it again?" I don't know why I said it like that. He wondered. I grimaced. "It's very difficult." He waited, his expression eager. "I feel uncomfortable." "I can't keep it up if I'm even the slightest bit distracted," I warned him. "I'll be good," I promised. He promised, sorry. I pursed my lips, my eyes narrowing, then I smiled. I pressed my hands to his face again, hefted the shield right out of my mind, and then started in where I'd left off, with the crystal clear memory of the first night of my new life, lingering on the details. I laughed breathlessly when his urgent kiss interrupted my efforts again. "Darn it," he growled, kissing me hungrily down the edge of my jaw. "We have plenty of time to work on it," I reminded him. "Forever and ever and ever," he murmured. "That sounds exactly right to me." And then we continued blissfully into this small but perfect piece of our forever. The end. Well, that took a lot longer than it should have, mostly because all the breaks that I had to take. I feel really bad. I can't remember. Did I read Eclipse first, or the Short Second Life? Oh well, I guess that's not important. Okay, now I've mentioned the host. I won't be reading it, almost certain. Almost certain, mostly because the reason I gave. I do need to finish reading, what's it called? Heir to the Empire. There's like 3 chapters left. So I might do that I think starting Tuesday. I'll come back to that. Let's see, what else? Let me know, like I said, any books you would be interested in. One commenter the other day suggested I read Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. I think I saw it at the local Barnes & Noble. Now that I have a car, I think what I'll do is on Wednesday when I get paid, I'll go up to there, and I'm going to I'll jot down a list of all the books that you guys have suggested, and I'll buy 1, 2, or 3. There's one book I really would like to read. It's been a long time since I've read it. Jurassic Park. It's a really good book. They were great movies, if you don't think about it too much. And it's a little piece of my childhood. If you've got any other suggestions, if you want something supernatural, I have this one book here that I was going to read at some point. It's called Shiver. I never finished it. If you guys would like another vampire series, there is one. It's called The Last Vampire. It's by Christopher Pike. It was another book that I used to read, or book series, rather. It was my sister's. We don't have it anymore. I'm not sure what happened to it. I assume it was sold to not Barnes & Noble, to Half Price Books. If you would like to hear that story, perhaps, I would love to do that. I just need to find them. And I'm working on a solo novel of my own, in addition to what Miga and I are doing. Based on Aztec culture. There's a book written by, I've forgotten his name. Dang it! I just had it too. Anyway, but it's called Aztec, and I would love to read that. It would be a fun little thing for me to do. The only issue I'd have is the names. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. Let me know. That hurt my ear. What you would like to see, what you'd like to hear, what you wouldn't like to see, what you wouldn't like to hear. If there are any games that you guys might be interested in me playing, just to watch me flail around and get scared, let me know. And until next time, goodbye everybody. Again, I'm really sorry about being so late.